You know, that article that we wrote that led to the establishment of the colloquium was really a life altering for us because it was really the beginning of our transition from being pure academics with an interest to make a difference to maybe for the first time or certainly in a bigger way that an idea that came from research lived outside of the institution and allowed us to create a growing network of researchers, scholars, practitioners, funders that are committed to addressing the challenges of black males in education across the globe. Like that might have been our first big project in that way.
Yeah. And you know what? As I go down memory lane and think about that project, when we were writing that, it really helped me to see my experience beyond American context, to go beyond the continental divide, and to, that was the first time that we began to recognize that the plight that many black males experience in this country, we began to realize it happens in other parts of North America, like Canada. We saw it in the Caribbean, and we saw it in the UK. But not only that, it helped us to begin to understand the male experience as an aggregate, regardless of race, regardless of geographical location. And we began to see that there's challenges that boys and men experience throughout the globe. And I would say we were ahead of the curve in some of the things that we're seeing right now as we speak. We were talking about this 15 years ago. And on some levels, I'm glad we talked about it, but I'm a little saddened because we didn't get ahead of it to create a disruption. And I'm hopeful. I think I was talking to someone earlier, and I was telling them that over 800,000 men as an aggregate, regardless of race, did not re-enroll in college after the pandemic. And I think we were talking about this, and now I would say it's getting even worse. And so I can't help but to believe that an intervention is needed, but I think this because of toxic masculinity and some of this that is kind of perpetuating or proliferating in popular literature, I'm not sure whether or not society has the will or the comfort to talk about these salient issues.
And for those that haven't read our article and hear us connect this to the International Colloquium of Black Males, they might not know that our original charge was to look at male underachievement across the globe. And we spent just as much time in that paper and our conceptualization of it to understand what does male underachievement mean in the context of women.
Yeah.
And that is it underachievement because it's a societal belief that males should outperform females, or is this just a natural realignment of what happens when equal access to education and opportunity is provided, and that perhaps women should outperform men?
Yeah.
And that there's nothing about this discussion being about underachievement.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And we're enamored with Finland and their achievements, and how when you look at industrial nations, many people look at Finland as being the darling of education. But when you disaggregate the data, you see some of the same things that we saw, that the men are not faring well throughout the educational, in every educational juncture. These are things that I hope institutions like Michigan State and others will take on, because these are things that could threaten our national security. It could threaten our ability to maintain our global edge as a larger society. And, much of what we need to talk about is vulnerability. And the groups that have the greatest vulnerability tend to be most impacted. And, it starts with oftentimes males of color. But, in 2004, I think Newsweek or Newsweek did a report, and the cover of the article said the new male crisis, and the image was white males, right? And so some could even say what we saw January the 6th speaks to that challenge that white males are experiencing. But I would say that black males have experienced for nearly 100 years. They're the only group we discovered, they're the only group that's never passed their female counterparts in matriculation in higher education. And when you look at other racial groups, women are matriculating at a higher rate. When we look at Asian population, when we look at Native population, we look at white population. But when you compare the racial groups, Black and African American, we've never passed our African American women counterparts. And so I think you raised some issues, and these are issues that we need to have, and we need to have honest, sincere conversations, and we need to have conversations driven around data, not really conjecture and innuendos.